Good morning and welcome to the Turtle Wins the Race Home-Based Business Podcast. I almost forgot where I was. My name is Kara Buntin and I've owned a home-based business since 1999, so that's what we talk about here. And it is morning for me. I have my caffeine. I'm not caffeinated yet, so I decided to go ahead and do this one because it's kind of a topic that you don't need to be caffeinated for, or maybe it's better if you're not, because then your filters don't work as well. And I wanted to talk about undercutters today. I may have mentioned this before. I don't know if I've talked about how to deal with undercutters. And sometimes you can't. Sometimes you can't deal with undercutters. I'm just going to put that right out there. Because undercutters are cowbirds. And I came up with that analogy because I was looking out in the back of my yard and I have bird feeders out there. And I saw a whole bunch of cowbirds, and I'm like, I think those are cowbirds. So I went to look them up in my handy Birds of Virginia book, because yeah, I have one of these. And this is what they are. They're actually kind of cute if you like cowbirds. And they're about the size of a blackbird. They're small. They're smallish. They're a blackbird family relative, right? So they're about 7, 8 inches long. So they're not tiny, but they're not enormous like a hawk. Okay. So I'm looking at the cowbird description and it says blah, blah, blah. Yeah, that's him. You know, it's definitely the right one. And then it says parasitic. And I'm like, what? And it says, of approximately 700 species of parasitic birds. And I'm like, what the heck is that? And it says, this is the only parasitic bird in Virginia, laying all eggs in host birds' nests and leaving others to raise its young. So, and I remembered this as soon as I read this, that cowbirds go around to the nests of smaller birds. They lay their eggs in the nest that somebody else made. And then they leave and they let somebody else feed their babies. Okay, and I seem to remember, I'm not sure if I'm making this up or not, but I don't think I am, that sometimes the smaller birds, because they lay their nests in, they lay their eggs in the nests of smaller birds, that the smaller birds will sometimes die feeding these baby cowbirds because they're so much bigger than their babies. So they not only have their own babies to feed, but the cowbird babies are so big that they demand so much more food that the parent birds sometimes will just die. And, they'll start feeding the baby cowbird because they're more aggressive and they're larger, and then their babies die. It's just a mess. So these cowbirds are out there basically siphoning off resources and laying their eggs where they did not make the bed, And I'm like, you're just like a GD undercut. I'm not going to say it. But yeah. So I was thinking about undercutters, and it's hard to deal with them. It's hard to deal with undercutters because a lot of the times you just can't. Like I said, you can't deal with them. But the difference, there's a different type of undercutter that we're dealing with now than we used to. And when I did wedding cakes, I started wedding cakes, like I said, 1999. So that was 25 years ago. And I was doing wedding cakes from my home. I was licensed. I was insured. I was inspected by the state. The state health, I think it was it's the health department. Was it the health department? It was like a weird Department of Agriculture or something in Virginia does inspections, but they would send someone to my home to inspect my kitchen and make sure I was handling things. And they would ask me questions about how do you handle the food? What do you do with allergens and that kind of stuff? And they would give me all the rules. So I went through all the right procedures to actually sell food legally from my home. I have a food handler's license. I still maintain that, blah, blah, blah. Well, in about 2000, I want to say about 2006 or 7, it might have been a little earlier, is when all those cake shows started popping up on TV. They started showing up, and it was making it made making cakes professionally look really fun and fast and easy. So a lot of people decided, I can do that. And the market just became flooded with undercutters because they weren't running businesses legally. They were just throwing up stuff, and I'm sure that we've all seen the what they ordered, what they got. The what they got is what these people were producing, okay? Because it's not anyway, I'm not going to get into rationalizing why it's not as easy. I don't need to justify that to anyone. It's not easy to run a business. We know that. It's not easy to run a business the right way. But if you're running a business the right way and you're doing everything the right way and you're designing your own stuff and you're doing your own work and you're getting licensed and you're paying for inspections and that kind of thing, it's not you have a definite disadvantage when an undercutter comes in who just does everything illegally, doesn't do their own designing, doesn't do their own work, just copies your stuff. I've had that happen a lot. People copy my cakes, whatever. But yeah, that's one type of undercutter. Okay, those types of undercutters, excuse me, those types of undercutters will eventually go away because they're actually having to physically make the product. And after a while, they decide it's not fun. It's actually work, and you have to kind of give up your weekends because you have to deliver cakes or you have to wait for people to pick them up. You can't just do what you want on the weekends, and then you have to have time away from your family because you have to make the cakes, and you at the end of the year, you realize you're not making any money. And it usually takes the end of the year because those are the same people that would go, and I called this grocery store financing, where they would go to the grocery store for their weekly grocery shop for their families, and they would just buy the cake stuff with that. So they were never really keeping track of expenses. And at the end of the day, if they made a cake that, like, I would have charged $150 for because I priced things correctly, they're charging $30 and they're going, I made $30. And they're standing there with 20 and the 10 in their hands. They're like, I made $30. And I'm like, you paid $35 for the ingredients and you spent 6 hours on it. You didn't make $30. But they're thinking, I made $30 because they're not accounting for anything. Okay, so that's one type of undercutter that we used to deal with before e-commerce. All right, but e-commerce is a little bit different because the undercutters they come in different packages. Okay, the undercutters come in different packages. Yeah, they all undercut your prices by a little bit. So they'll put something similar. It's generally not the same thing, especially if you were making your products. No one can make the products that you make because it's your neurology that goes into it. Okay, and keep that in mind because that's the important part of this, I think. But the important thing is to remember is that undercutters who have to do the physical work will generally go away. And yeah, you have to deal with them, and you're going to have to deal with more popping up as the first ones go away. But they eventually go away because they get tired of losing money and wasting their time. Okay? Some of them don't. Some of them are fine with just making a little extra money. And I know a few in my area that have been doing this for years. Like since I did cakes, there are people who undercut prices because they're just doing it for fun. I don't know if they're licensed. I have no idea what is going on with their businesses, but I see them on Facebook, right? And their cakes aren't bad because they've been doing it for that long, but they just don't charge what a professional would charge. Although at this point they could say that they're a professional because they've been doing it for so long. So the lines get blurry. But for the most part, people who are undercutting will eventually quit. However, in e-commerce and online sales, there are so many ways that you can make money, and it generally falls into that passive income bucket, right? It's all of the things that I call did a podcast about the grind set mindset. It's that kind of crowd who were like, I want to sell something on Etsy. What should I sell? They don't start with the product that they make. They start with saying, Etsy is a venue to sell things. I'm going to take advantage of the fact that it's easy to get on there. And it's a very, excuse me, I've got something in my throat today. It's a very low bar to entry. So I'm just going to find something and I'm going to sell it. It's that mindset that we're dealing with now. It's not the same as someone who has to make their own products and then will eventually get tired of doing that. These undercutters don't go away, okay? So these are the cowbirds who, and honestly, the cowbirds who come and will lay eggs in the other bird's nest, undercutters are cowbirds. The undercutters that we're dealing with now are the cowbirds because what they do is they come to whatever venue they're going to sell on and they look to see what has the bestseller badge, what says popular now, what is Etsy promoting? I'm going to sell that. And so basically they're looking at your nest and they're saying, okay, this is a good nest to be in. I'm going to just lay my eggs in your nest because you've already done the work to build it and you figured it out. I'm going to copy everything that you do. Okay. And the cowbirds aren't copying, but they're taking space where you don't have the space to give it. All right. So they are laying their eggs in your nest, so to speak. And then they walk away. The cowbirds just fly away and let somebody else do their work, okay? I am not talking about, now I'm going to discuss digital and POD right now. Okay, but before you stop listening and leave me a rude comment, listen to what I'm going to say, because if you are a digital seller, and I know plenty of them, I know that all the people in my eShop group do things the right way, and they're very frustrated by this. The Undercutters, they design the stuff that they sell. It is good quality. They're starting from scratch. They're using their own invention. They're using their own imagination. They're using their own creativity. And then someone comes along and copies everything they do. Okay, that's the cowbird. And this is the problem that we're dealing with now. It's not the same as someone who has to physically make the products. Because if you do digital or POD and you're designing your own stuff, you know very well that someone is going to copy it. Some cowbird's going to come along and lay their eggs in your nest, and then they're going to leave. And that's the problem. It's the leaving part is the problem. Okay, because no matter what you do, an undercutter can come and steal your stuff. And someone had posted in the eShop group a post about, it was from a different platform, but someone said, this company in China stole my entire Etsy shop. And I'm assuming that it was a digital shop. And they said they came and bought everything in the shop. And it would have to be digital for that, because most undercutters won't put in that much work. But it's a lot easier to do that if you're pricing things at $2 on Etsy, right? You price things at 99 cents. I've seen lots of digital stuff for 99 cents. It's a little crazy. But it's a lot easier to come and just buy everything and download it and then re-upload it to your own shop. And that's what these people do. Okay, or they change one thing and say, oh, now it's mine. I made it because I changed that thing. No, you didn't make it. Okay, so if you are designing your own stuff and doing things the right way, I'm not talking about you when I talk about digital and POD. So just, listen, calm down and listen, because you'll probably agree with me. So the undercutters that we're dealing with now, there are some with physical products, because I have undercutters. I sell cake decorations, and I have people who buy stuff wholesale off of, the Amazon or the Chinese websites or wherever, and they say that they're handmade and they're not. So we have reseller undercutters, and then we have the digital and POD undercutters. And in general, I would say that the vast majority of digital and POD undercutters who are just there to make a quick buck are not designing their own stuff. They're either using existing clip art, or like I said, they're buying someone else's stuff and then saying that they made it, and they're reselling it. And you all know that this is a rampant problem. This, copyright infringement and copying each other is a rampant problem. And it always will be. There is no way that we're going to get around this. This is the thing. Because you have to understand that this is a different type of retail environment than it used to be, where everything was a physical product and we didn't have digital products. So it's a different playground now, and you need to learn how to play in that playground. Unfortunately, if you post something online, some cowbird's going to come along and steal it. That's just how it goes. So how do you deal with that? Okay, well, the original idea of, just wait and they'll get tired of it, that doesn't apply here, because these are cowbirds who can just lay their eggs and then fly away, and they never have to look back because it's all digital. This is the situation that we're dealing with now that we didn't deal with 20 years ago. That you can set up an Etsy shop, have it all be digital, spend all your day stealing other people's stuff, and you never have to look at those listings again because it's digital. You might have to answer some questions from customers. They don't care, that's fine. Or they don't answer them and their shops get shut down. But then they open more shops. That's how they work. So they can afford to go ahead and price things lower to be your undercutter, because they're not doing any work to actually make the thing. So their investment in that is zero, basically, except they have to copy it. Their creative investment is zero, I'll put it that way. And they can walk away and they don't care. They don't see, this is the mentality of this group. And I don't think that people understand this, because when you're comparing your digital shop or your POD shop to an undercutter's, you're thinking, I need to make enough money to make a living. They're thinking, as long as I make 50 cents on every sale, that's good. It's a completely different mentality, and it's a completely different way of looking at this. So they don't mind undercutting you. They don't mind posting prices that are, ridiculously low. And people say, I don't know how they can afford this. And a lot of times they can't, but they're doing it in order to get the sales, because Etsy's system works on sales. So the more sales you have, the more visibility your listing has. So they put things on like really low discounts. And I heard somebody say this on YouTube. I made the mistake of watching some Etsy videos the other day. Oh my God. This guy said, as soon as you post things, post it at a deep discount. I'm like, you can't do that legally, number one. So check the laws in your area, because you can't put things on discount if you haven't sold it at the normal price. So, number one, they're offering you legal advice. You can get in trouble with that. But they're basically selling things at a super low price to get the sales numbers up. And they don't care if they lose money, because they know that down the road, they will make 50 cents per sale. And that's all they want to do. I've seen people in different areas of making money online invest $10,000 in something. And if they make $10,001 eventually, they're like, this is successful. Because now they can kind of walk away and they know that it'll just work on its own. And every dollar that comes in is a dollar they don't have to pay for. All right. So it's a different mentality. And you can't fight that, because this is the grindset mindset scammer mentality, where you're piecing things together in order to make what would be considered a decent income. Okay. So if you are someone who's actually trying to make a living from your artwork, this is a problem. The only ways that you can keep ahead of this, and this is how I keep ahead. My undercutter is not a digital person. It's someone physical who is reselling things, like I said. So the way that I did it, I looked at her pricing and my pricing, and I'm like, okay, well, I had free shipping rolled into my pricing. So I pulled that out in order to be able to drop my retail price back, not to her level, because it's still way too low, but to a level where I was okay with the profit on that. And then I added the shipping bit in on the other side. So customers now pay for shipping. And on Etsy, I put the $35 free shipping guarantee on, because that equals free shipping on a listing. So I still get included in the free shipping filters and that kind of stuff, so that doesn't bother me. But the idea that the visible price that you have there is more in line with what everybody else is doing. And basically everybody in my category is now undercutting, because they're all buying stuff and reselling it. It's absurd. And the other way that I differentiate myself, and that's not really differentiating myself, that's kind of figuring out what they're doing, what is their plan. And they're all making it up with high postage on the, so it's like, $10 for the thing and $20 to ship it. It's the same. We're going back to where Etsy was 20 years ago, right? We're back to where it was. And it's ridiculous, because that's what Etsy has been trying to get away from, this deceptive postage. But that's what the undercutters end up doing. You have to look at their pricing, figure out, can I compete with that? Is it worth it? Okay. So that's the first thing you have to look at. Can I compete with this price in some way? And is it worth it to compete with that? If it's not, maybe you don't sell that thing anymore. And I'm 100% serious about that, because there comes a point where there are enough undercutters where they have driven the price down so low that people think that that's the normal price. So if I am on Etsy and I'm selling a digital download for $3, but everybody else is selling it for 99 cents, people look at $3 and go, oh, you are trying to gouge me? What a ripoff. $3, how dare, So it's, what does the market make a normal price look like? And if you can get within that, and I have gotten within that with my products, and with the shipping on top, I'm actually making more per sale than I was when I had the free shipping included. So it's not a bad thing. I figured out that, because the customer's paying for shipping now, and I charge counter rates, so I make a little bit more per label than I'm spending per label, which is good. That's what you should be doing. But if that's not your situation and you're not shipping anything, you're just doing digital, you have to just keep making new stuff. And eventually someone's going to come along and copy that. But you have to innovate. You have to do new designs, maybe in a slightly different niche. And niches are important now. Niches are more important ever, because that's what these people look like. They look at niches that no one has saturated yet. So if I'm coming on Etsy and I'm like, I want to sell jewelry, well, number one, good luck. Okay. But if you're going to sell jewelry, you have to look at, what does Etsy think jewelry is? And Etsy probably thinks jewelry, when you search for jewelry, it probably thinks it's those little dainty necklaces that people are reselling. It's not handmade. None of it is handmade. And you have to look at that and say, okay, is that what I want to sell? Or do I want to do something slightly different? And if you do want to do jewelry, then there is a solution for that, which I'll get to in a minute. But if you're doing digital and POD, you're just going to have to keep making new stuff. I hate to say it. You have to keep one step ahead of them so that you can charge for something that they don't have or they can't make. Okay. Eventually someone is going to steal it, and then you'll have to find something else. It's very irritating, but that's how it is. Unless you are able to command a higher price because you are a brand. All right. Now, branding is interesting because you can have two things. Think of the store brand chicken soup and the name brand chicken soup. Okay. Chances are it comes from the same factory. And there are factories that do, grocery items that will just stop the assembly line, switch the packaging out, and keep going with the same product for a different brand because that's what they do. And I used to buy butter at Walmart when I did wedding cakes, and I realized that they have numbers on the butter that tell you what lot it came from. And I realized that the Walmart butter was the same lot number as the brand name butter, but the brand name was a lot more expensive. Okay. But a lot of people will buy, and let me just clarify that means it was coming from the same factory, the same assembly line, different packaging. That's all. The packaging was different. The product was the same. Okay. People will spend more for a brand because they know the brand and they like the brand. All right. So one thing that you can do to stay ahead of the undercutters who are not willing to put that time in, and a lot of them right now, I'm thinking of the undercutters that I know in a different, like in the blogging world, they're all freaking out because they're realizing that Google is now expecting them to be a brand in order to rank higher in Google search results because Google has figured this out. Google's figured out what they're doing, and they're like, I don't know how to be a brand. And they're talking about things like the know, like, trust, like you have to get people to know you, like you, and trust you before they'll buy from you. They're talking about branding. They're talking about marketing. They're talking about email lists. Like it's something brand new that no one has ever discovered before because they never use that stuff. They just copy things and slap it up and then they fly away. So one way that you can help yourself to be able to charge higher prices is to market yourself as a brand. And that means, making sure that your branding colors are the same across all of the platforms that you use. If you have a website and an Etsy shop, make sure that everything looks the same so that when people go from one to the other, they're not confused. It looks the same. They know that they're in the right place. If you go from one place and it's all black and white and the other place is pink and green, it's going to look like a different business. So you want to make sure that people know it's the same business. And that's the same for your social media accounts. You want to make sure your social media accounts reflect the branding that you have in other places. Okay. Once you are able to build up kind of a brand awareness, people will be willing to pay more for your brand. And that's just a psychological thing that happens when people know, like, and trust your brand. And this is really important going forward. It's more important now than it was because of all of the digital stuff that's going on. It's more important now than it was when I was doing wedding cakes because people are shopping online and they have a lot more brands to choose from. It's more important now, and I said that this is the third reason, because people are looking for a connection now to, if they're looking for handmade, they're looking for handmade, okay? And I think that there is so much digital stuff being thrown at them, and the AI, people don't understand AI. They think it's some kind of magic, but they're becoming more aware that robots are running a lot of this stuff and they don't like it. And I was talking to my husband, it was like last month. Remember when I've mentioned this before, when Sports Illustrated got caught writing an article with maybe multiple articles with, it was completely written by AI. The person's picture that said, this is the author, that was an AI generated image. That person didn't exist. And they got caught. And people freaked out. And my husband was like, I can't believe this. And I said, this has been going on for years. This is not new. But people are not aware of it unless you're in that world and you kind of hear about this stuff all the time. As people become more aware of that, they're going to want more of a human connection and they're going to want the brands that they know, like, and trust. And that's going to be more important. So if you are dealing with an undercutter, Evaluate whether you can keep up and on the pricing. Look at the pricing first. Don't drop your prices. That's not what I'm saying. Don't drop your prices. I basically raised my prices by lowering them because I included the shipping. Now the customer pays for that, and they're paying more than $17 before, or now, where they were paying $16 before with the shipping included. So they're paying more now with me having a lower display price for the item. Okay. They're still buying from me. That's fine. So figure out if you can tweak your pricing to be in line more with the display price if everyone else is undercutting. But before you do that, try to offer things that the undercutters don't offer. Find niches that they don't serve. And I know some people that have done that and they're doing pretty well. And I'm not going to say what it is because then everyone will go copy it, that's the danger, because you're going to get someone copying you eventually. The cowbirds will come. Eventually the cowbirds will come. And work on your brands. So look at your pricing, see what adjustments you can make, if any. And if you can't make any, then don't lower your price if that's not an option. Offer quality and products that they can't, because they're not either buying things from a supplier that doesn't make that stuff. I sell a lot of stuff now that the suppliers in China won't make because it takes too long. I can make it and it doesn't take me that long, and I can charge for it because no one else is selling it. All right. And then develop your brand. And those are the 3 ways that you can kind of get around the undercutters. You're not going to get rid of them. They're not going to go away. See, this is the thing. It used to be that we would say they'll go away eventually. They're not going away. Because they can list things and walk away because it's digital. So it's a different world. It's a different type of undercutter, and you have to take different tactics with it. So unfortunately, that's the message. It's not great. They won't go away. All right. Leave me any questions. Give this video a thumbs up. Even if you didn't like it, I'm sorry if I'm telling you have to do more work, but that's just how it is sometimes. But give this video a thumbs up. It does help the channel. I will talk to you next week. And leave me any comments. If you have an undercutter, tell me what they do. I would like to hear that. All right. I'll talk to you later.